Good morning and welcome. This is Rabbi Pearl. This is Jewish Talk on the Voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHBC, streaming live on the college station. And I'm Rabbi Pearl, and today we are discussing the baseball game. But before I do that, it's all about the gardening secrets. This is an invitation, dear friends. Mark it down on your calendar. Join us for a horticulture trip and training into vegetable gardening in your backyard and in containers. We're speaking about a free lecture with Linda Levy. She is the champion jumbo tomato grower here on Long Island. Let's hear for Linda Levy. We're talking about next Sunday. Join us next Sunday, May 7th at 12 noon at Congregation Beth Shalom Chabad, where Linda Levy will share with us the secrets of gardening. Learn easy 1, 2, 3 methods of how to plant, fertilize, and produce jumbo vegetables. Now, I'm looking forward to being there myself because I would not want to miss this opportunity because everyone goes home with a tomato plant. Now, where else in the world can you get a free tomato plant except at Chabad of Mineola? There'll be a light brunch, all ages welcome, men and women. Please join us for this special Gardening Secrets, a free lecture with Linda Levy, and learn how to produce jumbo vegetables and plants and how to deal with it as part of the introduction to this very meaningful event. Yours truly will be discussing, as an opener to Linda Levy, everything Jewish about the plants of Israel and the fascinating insights and mystical dimensions of what fruits and vegetables in this wonderful world that we've been blessed to live in. Let's now go to the baseball game. I want to tell you a story that happened in the 50s when a young bar mitzvah boy went to see the Lubavitcher Rebbe on honor and on his upcoming bar mitzvah. It was a month before his bar mitzvah. His grandfather had taken him because his grandfather remained a devout Jew, a second-generation American, and he insisted that this young man should meet the Rebbe and receive his blessings in preparation for becoming this Jewish adult. You see, his own parents were not so into it. They had sadly abandoned religious practice, so it was his grandfather who had assumed the primary role in this young man's Jewish education, giving him lessons in the rudiments of Yiddishkeit several times a week and actually taking him to the synagogue on the Sabbath. Now, I'm sharing this story directly from the young man himself. This is a story that appeared in a very famous newspaper that is read around the world. And he says the following, that his first surprise was when he met the Rebbe of his youthful appearance, because he'd expected a Hasidic sage with a long white beard, but the Rebbe, who was in his early 50s at that time, had appearance and the manner of a man of 15 years younger than himself. His second surprise was, here he was here to receive blessings about his religious training and his bar mitzvah. What's the first question the Rebbe asked him was, what's your favorite sport? A Rebbe, this holy rabbi, is asking this bar mitzvah boy, just shy of 13, what's your favorite sport? And he replied, baseball. And the Rebbe asked him, how do you enjoy the game? When one team plays or when two teams plays against each other? This was the question. Rabbi, he said, you can't play baseball with only one team? Why? Asked the Rebbe. Rabbi, the young boy patiently explained, the entire point of the game is which side is going to score more runs than the other. So you got to have two teams. And the boy says, I was relieved to see that the Rebbe understood. So who usually wins? The Rebbe pressed on. Whoever plays best. Proud of his inspired reply. I don't know what his grandfather thought of the conversation, but the Rebbe continued to direct all his attention to me. Says this young man. Tell me, he now asked me, the Rebbe asked him, do you and your friends play much baseball? Sure, we play a lot. Do you also go to watch the baseballs at the stadium? Sure. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, this is the time when I think it was the Dodgers were still in Ebbets Field. But why do you have to go and watch others play if you know how to play the game yourself? Asked the Rebbe. Again, the boy said he felt frustration of needing to explain the obvious. Rabbi, he said, suppressing his smile, when we play, we're just a bunch of kids playing. But with the major leagues, it's the real thing. And the Rebbe said to him, Joseph, with a warm, illuminating smile, your heart is a baseball field. And in that baseball team, in your baseball field are two teams. They're competing. One side is called the good inclination, the Yetzer Tov. And the other team is called the evil inclination, the Yetzer Hara. But up until now, it was a kid's game. But now with your bar mitzvah, the real game begins. So listen, the Rebbe said to him, God is giving you a special gift, a major league Yetzer Tov, with the skills and the talents to beat the Yetzer Hara and guide you through a righteous and constructive life. Remember, Joseph, just like in baseball, whoever plays best wins. Now, his grandfather repeated the Rebbe's baseball analogy at his bar mitzvah. And he says, this young man now says, he remembers this wonderful visit with the Rebbe. Beyond that, I did not recall the Rebbe's words making much of an impression on my 13-year-old self. This is the young boy speaking. But there were two events in my adult years that testified that the Rebbe's words affected me far more deeply than I was aware at the time. So, ladies and gentlemen, I want to share with you what the Rebbe said to this 13-year-old that impacted him on two major, you could say, thresholds in his life, watershed moments in his life. And as you will see from the story, from the Rebbe's response and what it meant to the boy, we too often find ourselves having to make decisions. Listen carefully to the conclusion of the story, and you'll appreciate how we can apply this to ourselves when we too have to make important decisions. The first event that happened to this Joseph was 3 years later, in the 16th year of his life, in his second year in high school. His class had won a school-wide competition and was awarded a weekend trip to a luxurious resort in New Orleans. I came home that evening bursting with excitement and joy. My parents, however, received the news in uncomfortable silence. Finally, the mother says to me, Joe, there's a problem. There's a problem about you going on this trip. Yom Kippur is that weekend. As you know, we always observe Yom Kippur. We fast and we attend the synagogues in the synagogue. We've never desecrated the holiness of the day, and we expect the same of you. Mom, I protest. You don't understand. This is an opportunity of a lifetime. All year we've been dreaming of winning this prize. I never forgive myself if I miss this. The arguments continued all week. My parents said they understood how important the trip was to me. Nevertheless, they maintained there are certain hallowed values that which we must set above all else. I countered that I've always kept Yom Kippur, and I shall continue to do that all my life, but nothing will happen if I made this exception for a once-in-a-lifetime experience to go to, on this trip. In the end, my parents, who prided themselves with their liberal approach to my child rearing, said to me, listen, Joe, you know we never force our convictions on you. We've told you how we feel about the matter. Now the decision is yours. And of course the decision was really made. New Orleans, here I come. The night before the trip, Joseph continues, I watched a baseball game at my friend's home. The game ended with a breathtaking comeback in the last inning by the team that had been trailing by several runs throughout the game. Over the cheering of the crowd, we heard the broadcaster say the following words. Well, after all said and done, there are no two ways about it in baseball. The team that plays best wins. And Joe says, suddenly I remembered my conversation with the Rebbe, the very same words. Guess what, dear friends? Joe stayed home that Yom Kippur. The second event that took place 5 years later is during his college years. It was in the year 1962. Everyone in campus and those in the 60s were searching for, I quote, meaning to life. Two friends who had fallen in with a group of Mormon missionaries operating on campus invited me to a lecture and discussion. So I was attending regularly. My meager Jewish education was no match for their sophisticated presentations. Soon I began to see my own faith as a shallow, bourgeois, and devoid of spiritual content, and theirs as inspiring and rejuvenating. And the more involved I became, the more I felt, for the first time, my life had meaning and direction. My only problem was how to break the news to my parents. I knew that, liberal views notwithstanding, they would be extremely upset with my conversion. I decided to say nothing as of yet and wait for the opportune time to tell them of my new life. I even harbored hopes of eventually bringing them to see the light themselves. Shortly before I was to be baptized, I played shortstop in our weekly baseball game on campus. We played atrociously and lost badly. As we left the field, I found myself walking alongside the captain of the winning team, slapping him on the back and saying, "Well, there is no two ways about it in baseball. The team that plays best wins." I barely was able to finish the sentence. I'm sure my friend, Joe says, wondered why I suddenly turned white, as did the Mormon teachers, as to why I suddenly severed all contact with them. He had remembered the Rebbe's words. My friends, we too, in the game of life, make decisions and find ourselves at crossroads sometimes, not sure whether to go to the right or to the left. Let us learn this important lesson from the Rebbe, from the baseball. And my wonderful engineer says to me, "Do not mention the Mets today." Well, I'm not mentioning the Mets. That's off the record. But yes, baseball is the season now. But remember, it's the best. We all have a baseball feel inside of us. And there are two teams. And that which, the one, our neshama, our soul, our Yetzer Tov, is filled with ability for us to make the right decisions. Key decisions that make a difference in our life. Interestingly, we talk about education. If you were Moses and you were giving your speech on the night the Jewish people left Egypt, what would you say? What would you ask of your people? What would you be saying to yourself? Well, guess what? Even though it was a night of freedom, what Moses said was gather your family together and educate them. Thus, the famous Seder. The Seder is an educational moment in bringing the family together specifically to speak to the Jewish children of that generation and future generations of the importance of how to channel the freedom that we were being given at Mount Sinai. Dear friends, we had the Seder just a couple of weeks ago. That was a continuation of that amazing moment when we left Egypt. Each day we educate ourselves. We have an opportunity to educate our children and grandchildren in the same way Moses made that first educational speech, so to speak, at the Seder. The Seder of life continues every single day. We stop and do a formal one on the night of Passover. But the concept of being in the position of educating and being an example and appreciation of the freedom of what it meant to be free from Egypt, from all the constrictions and limitations, and to receive and to arrive at Mount Sinai with the freedom of what Torah mitzvahs provides us, is something worthy of focus. Now, dear friends, in the Jewish calendar right now, we're in what is known as the days of the Sphira. And the reason there are special laws of mourning during this period, such as not getting haircuts or holding weddings. And the reason for this semi-mourning atmosphere during this period of time between Passover and Shavuos is because during this time, 24,000 students of Rabbi Akiva, due to their lack of respect for each other, passed away with a terrible epidemic. Why is it that we remember this and have this form of mourning during this time? Because Rabbi Akiva and his 24,000 students were the key continuity between generation to generation. They were passing on the Torah from one generation to generation. Right now, you and me and every one of us are part of that disciples that continues through our example, through our learning, through our sharing, the continuity of Torah. So at that time, to lose 24,000 students that were so integral to the continuity of Torah was a disaster. It was, in a certain sense, a severance of what Torah was starting at Mount Sinai all the way into that time and forward. And the world remained desolate of Torah until Rabbi Akiva had to restart from scratch with his famous 5 students. He was a master teacher. He was a key link to the oral tradition stretching back all the way back to Moses. So much so, the Talmud tells us that whenever we encounter an anonymous statement in the Mishnah, in the Tosefta, in the Sifri, in the Sifra, it is one of Rabbi Akiva's new students that now recounted the teachings from that Rabbi Akiva. See, Rabbi Akiva lived through the destruction of the Second Holy Temple. His students